Good morning, everyone. This is a supplement to lesson 5. After I recorded, I realized I had glossed over some things that may need a little bit more explanation. So the first thing I want to talk about is trimming and clipping your curved seam allowances. So I've done this in dark thread so you can see it. Here I have a curved seam. I've clipped it to about, trimmed it, I should say, to about, I don't know, 3/16 or an eighth, whatever. But now when I go to turn this in, like you will do when you're turning your lining to the inside, it's even with that small a seam allowance, it's going to bind somewhat because this is smaller than this, basically, if you think about it in geometric terms. So what we do in this case, and this is true on any inside curve, is that we clip that seam allowance. And this is, you need a pair of scissors that's sharp up to the point, and you just clip it like this, almost, but not quite to the seam. And then when you go to turn it, because then it's going to bend, I'm trying to get my hands out of the way here, it's going to bend the other way, those clips will open and you'll be able to turn your seam to the other side, and it will not bind. It will turn nicely. Those little clips will open up. The opposite is true of an outside curve. On an outside curve, like on the outside edge of a collar, you don't need to clip. But sometimes what you might want to do is cut little V's in your seam allowance. So just pretend this is an outside curve. It is not. It's an inside curve. But on an outside curve, you might want to clip little tiny notches like that, so that when it curves in on itself, you won't have fold. The little notches will go over each other and be smoother. Okay, so that's number one. The other thing I want to say is about poking out your corners on your shoulder seams. Don't use something that's too sharp, because let me tell you, you can go right through those corners so easily. And when you, before you turn it, when you have the corner, and this applies to your, the upper end of your bodice where your buttonholes are going to go, and the back strap where the, the front has the buttonholes, and then the back strap where the buttons go. When you've done your seam, let me just draw it here, like this. Okay, and you clip all around. Let's just pretend this is you've stitched this. Not very even here, but you'll get the idea. Okay, so this is say it's your shoulder strap. You also want to clip across these corners, okay, which kind of makes sense, but I just, in case you don't know, okay, and that will make your little points come out much smoother. The other thing that you need to do is to tack your lining down at the armholes. Now, this little dress, I'm going to take mine off the hanger here. Hold on. Okay. So here's my little dress, right? You want to tack your lining down at your underarm, because otherwise this lining's going to flop all over the place. It's kind of nice that the lining comes down and covers up the back of your smocking, but because it's not anchored or sewn to the bodice like sometimes they are, you do need to tack it down at least at the armhole edge. And I did about an inch, but you can just actually tack it right here, and that's all if you want to, but I did a tiny bit more. And the last thing I want to say is about your hem. I do all my hems by hand, but I recently did a nightgown for one of my granddaughters, and I used the blind stitch on my machine, and it came out beautiful. So if you have a blind stitch, you might want to practice with it a little bit, but it does work beautifully. And if you have like a floral fabric, or something, some kind of a print, those little stitches really don't show at all once you kind of get the technique down pat on your machine. So that's really all I have to say about this little dress. I hope yours comes out great, and we will schedule another Zoom meeting maybe in about, I don't know, a week and a half or so, to let people get along on their progress a bit more. Okay, the next, I'm going to record one more video, and that's going to be on the little blouse, just to explain some of the changes that you need to make. Okay, bye.